Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, century-old text that honestly feels incredibly modern. Back in 1919, H. Caldwell Cook published The Playway, an essay and educational method. It was this radical manifesto for progressive education, totally based on his real-world time teaching at the Peirce School in Cambridge. Cook essentially looked around and decided that the entire educational system of his time was fundamentally broken. His revolutionary fix? Stop treating learning like a chore and start treating it as a deeply engaging game.
So, to start us off, I want you to ask yourself a question. Why exactly is there this massive abyss between the nursery and the classroom? Think about a young kid at home. They wake up at the crack of dawn, intensely focused on their play. Whether they're pretending to be pirates, building elaborate forts, or running these complex imaginary campaigns. They put immense effort and laser focus into these games. But the very second they enter formal schooling, poof, that intense, focused energy just seems to vanish. Why on earth do we force kids to abandon the exact mechanism through which they naturally learn about the world?
Well, here's our roadmap for figuring that out. We're going to cover the problem with traditional pedagogy, redefine work and play, explore some actual game-based mechanics, apply play directly to formal subjects like math, and finally, look at school as life practice. We're moving from abstract 1919 philosophy right down into the concrete everyday applications.
Section 1. The problem with pedagogy, breaking free from book slavery. Cook uses this absolutely powerful metaphor to describe traditional schooling. He writes, "Why this everlasting slavery to books? You give him molds for his brickmaking, and overseers, but you give him no clay." See, Cook's main critique of the traditional classroom is that it just spoon-feeds prepackaged opinions to students. We give them the rigid structures, the molds, and we give them teachers to watch over them, the overseers, but we don't let them get their hands dirty with the actual material of learning. We literally don't give them the clay to construct their own understanding.
And you can see the stark contrast between these two models. Traditional pedagogy relies heavily on passive instruction, compulsion, and above all else, just sitting still. The Playway, on the other hand, is all about practice, actually doing things, harnessing a kid's natural interest and physical movement. Cook argued that, without interest, there's just no learning. I mean, if you just tell a child how a bird flies, they might memorize a fact for a test. But if you let them build something that glides and experiment with it, they actually internalize the concept.
Section 2. Redefining work and play, the true nature of play.
Now, when we talk about game-based learning, we really have to correct a super common misconception about what play actually means. Cook defines play as the doing of anything with one's heart in it. It's not just idle amusement or, goofing off in the back of the class. It's sincere endeavor. Cook views the child as a true amateur, like in the original pure sense of the word, someone who does things for the pure love and interest of it. Just think about the incredibly strict rules kids invent for their playground games, and how rigorously they enforce them. There's a deep honesty of purpose in play that traditional schooling completely ignores.
Because what happens when we artificially separate work and play? Honestly, you kind of ruin the value of both. Work, when it's entirely divorced from play and personal interest, just becomes mere drudgery. And play, when you completely separate it from any sort of productive work or learning, becomes a mere pastime, just an empty diversion to kill the clock. Cook's whole philosophy insists that genuine, lasting learning requires us to merge the two. When work is actually done with joy at heart, it transforms. It becomes play.
Section 3. The mechanics of game-based learning, self-government, and active interest.
Okay, so it's one thing to philosophize, right? But how do we actually implement game-based learning? Well, first, you literally hand over responsibility to the students. Second, you establish classroom self-government. Cook found out that if boys are actually in charge of creating and enforcing their own rules, they behave way better than when they're just coerced by an authority figure. Third, you introduce what he called little man lectures. Instead of the teacher just droning on at the front of the room, the boys take turns speaking to the class on subjects they actually care about, while the other students listen, evaluate, and even grade them. It turns the whole act of teaching and learning into this collaborative game where peer feedback drives just unbelievable engagement.
Another brilliant mechanical application Cook used was something he called Playtown and Islands. The boys literally built scale models of towns and drew out these complex, wildly imaginative maps. By engaging in this physical model building, essentially playing a massive ongoing game of town creation, they were naturally and enthusiastically learning complex social concepts, spatial awareness, and geography. They weren't just staring at a dusty old atlas, they were getting their hands dirty and creating the world.
Section 4. The Playway in Mathematics, applying play to formal subjects.
Now, a skeptic might be wondering, sure, that sounds fun for art or geography, but how does this apply to rigid, formal subjects like mathematics? Well, Cook completely transforms math from a static desk activity into a dynamic, hands-on game. Instead of just reading about angles in a textbook, boys used kite making to learn geometry. They built bridges with their scout patrols or worked together to figure out how to calculate the width of an actual river without crossing it. By tying mathematics directly to real-world building, math just becomes the necessary rule set required to achieve the win condition, making the object actually work. The formulas aren't just boring abstractions anymore. They're literally the mechanics of the game.
Cook has a great quote that brilliantly illustrates the philosophy behind this. He says, "That necessary precision of a joiner, who by measurement makes things fit, is surely a mathematical quality. The inherent rules of physical construction provide these amazing, immediate feedback loops, exactly like a video game or a board game does today. Think about it. If your geometry is wrong, the kite won't fly. If your measurements are off, the bridge collapses. The student actively wants to get the math right because they want to win the game of construction."
So the core takeaway here is huge. Physical movement, real-world mechanics, and hands-on tasks prove that learning formal math absolutely does not require sitting still at a desk for an hour. In fact, injecting the physical energy of play, the strict rules of a game, and the immediate feedback of real-world mechanics actually enhances a student's ability to grasp difficult subjects. Interest and movement aren't distractions from math. They're actually the most powerful engines you can use to drive it forward.
Section 5. School as life practice, beyond preparation.
So what's the ultimate overarching purpose of the Playway? It boils down to Cook's most profound thought. School shouldn't just be preparation for life, it should be actual practice at life. Traditional education operates on this weird assumption that you sit in a sterile room for 12 years, memorizing disconnected facts, and then suddenly, boom, you're released into the real world to finally start living. But Cook argued that treating the school as a vibrant, self-governing, active mini-world creates this seamless transition into adulthood. By playing at life, students are actually practicing for it every single day.
Which brings us right to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this memorable and frankly pretty provocative question to chew on. Is your education a preparation for life or just a slavery to books? Whether you're a student right now, a teacher, or just a lifelong learner, it really challenges us to rethink our own relationship with how we learn. Are you putting your heart into it? Are you actively playing the game of learning? Or are you just sitting still waiting for the bell to ring? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Playway, and hey, keep learning out there.